Now I'm the gal that's chasing you up. Really flip my lid. Come here, eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, baby. Well, what are you gonna do with this eager beaver, baby of mine? Ooh, I'm all there beside you.
Hello and welcome to
What's That? An Orgy?
Woo!
Was it?
Was it? I don't know.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Starring Charlene and Teresa Bawd,
Yes.
two sisters who like to explore the topics of sex, sexuality, gender, and sex positivity in today's world. That's what we do.
Yeah,
we will
but not in
also-
bed together.
No, definitely not.
Talking.
Definitely. I mean, unless
Yeah.
we're just like laying there cuddling like sweet sisters.
Two sweet sisters
Two
in a
sweet
slumber
sisters.
party. Yeah. Inside joke, sorry.
We might actually answer the question, was that an orgy? Today, our guest is Amelia Lichtenberg, relationship anarchist, relationship consultant, and blogger for Love is the Action.
And artist. And badass.
And badass artist. She's got an amazing t-shirt on with some really cool art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Ta-da.
we're going to be talking about relationship anarchy in theory and practice and how those things can be similar and different. Hi, Amelia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's
our
nice to be
pleasure.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. So maybe if you want to start just by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you happened into relationship anarchy.
Yeah, sure. So my journey into relationship anarchy, I don't know if it's common or not. But so in about early 2018, I basically had my last fill with trying monogamy and it failing miserably for whatever purpose, and spent several months healing from that experience. And then a good friend of mine was also kind of in a similar place of I'm not really sure what to do. And we were talking about relationship anarchy, which isn't really as well known in Michigan, which is where I was living at the time in Detroit. Relationship anarchy is kind of synonymous with solo polyamory out there, which we'll get more into the distinctions later. But so they were like, oh yeah, I'm kind of interested in trying relationship anarchy. What do you think? And so I was like, okay, well, let's try this together. Long story short, I took to it like water. They decided they wanted to go back to monogamy, and
She knows what that's like.
and
I
that's
totally get you.
yeah, and that's the short version of the story. And so ever since then, just been learning more and exploring and trying to share what I've learned with others. And
Cool.
Learning to swim in the ocean of beyond monogamy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
Yes. Good for you.
It's
Thank
a
you.
wild one for sure. Like there's so many ways to do it. So what were your kind of initial sources or the guidelines that you used to start relationship anarchy?
Well, it was really mostly just being left up to my own devices, honestly. I mean, I knew what compersion was. That word was around the poly community in Detroit, but I didn't know about the Relationship Anarchy manifesto or anything else like that. Like I said, Relationship Anarchy was synonymous with solo polyamory in Detroit. They don't really even have a difference between poly and non-monogamy out there. It's just kind of all poly.
Okay.
So it really was just kind of left to our own devices. Oh, I understand what compersion is, so let me just put that into practice. And then my life being so transient and just kind of having to be fluid with whatever is alive with a person or a situation, it just made sense to me. And then for my beloved at the time, they had a very specific vision for what they wanted relationally. They wanted the partner, kids, the whole 9 yards. And so it just didn't really jive as much for them as a lifestyle as it did. So really just experience. And then when I moved out here, I learned about the Relationship Anarchy manifesto and was like, wow, this would have been really helpful.
Right. No kidding.
Isn't that how it goes? I did kind of the similar thing happened to me. Like I kind of stumbled into a lifestyle, made a lot of mistakes, and then found the resources afterwards. And I was like, gosh, if only I would have had this a year ago. That
Right.
really would have helped.
Yeah, I do think that is a pretty common theme for a lot of people when it comes to non-monogamy, whether they end up taking to it or not, is the way that they're introduced to it in practicality. There's not I mean, there are a lot of resources, but they're hidden. And so
Yeah.
to find easy access resources or someone to talk to or somebody on,
Right.
TikTok or Instagram who's just
Yeah.
there giving this information, it's starting to happen, but it, wasn't even like that 5 years ago.
Right. It's true.
Oh my God.
Polyamory was pretty radical as far as my communities were concerned 5 years ago, and only now things are really starting to come to the forefront. So that's part of why I do things like this, is just help share the information so that maybe
Yeah.
more people can come to non-monogamy or relationship anarchy in a more wholesome and understanding kind of way, rather than muddying through the marshes and then having to clean all the muck off,
Right.
Totally.
Like, just making your mistakes first. I mean, hence the term hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm all about just getting the information out there. And even if even if monogamy is like where someone settles, or if they like pick a totally different style, or if they listen to what we're saying and they go like, whoa, I can tell already that's so not for me. I feel like at least they got some information where they weren't just kind of relying on assumptions to make their choices, or they weren't making sort of fear-based choices like, oh, if I don't do this monogamous relationship, there's really not going to be anything out there for me. And to just like see what all your options are, like walking into Baskin Robbins and going, oh, 31 flavors of relationships, this is amazing.
Right. Well, you brought up the term relationship anarchy with me when I was talking about, starting to look into polyamory, and I was like saying, God, I just don't even identify. Like, I have a hard time with identifying with things, and I also just find myself resistant. Like, I don't want to identify with things because I want to be free, and I want to be honest with who I am, where I am in my life at all times, and that's the most important thing to me. And then that's when Shar brought up, like, I think you're a relationship anarchist. And I was like, no, that sounds terrible. Like, it's just, again, like, we think of like, just these rebellious teenagers smashing windows and writing anarchy symbols on things. And I don't want to be associated with that. I mean, I really feel like the more I learn about relationship anarchy, even though I don't want to be identified and put myself in a box, but the more I learn about it, the more I think like, wow, I really do identify with that, because it's not even saying I won't even do monogamy. It's just, it's saying so much more that I'll let you take over and talk about. I think there's a good.
I love where this is going.
Yeah.
Something that I bring up in every talk that I do, every relationship one-on-one that I do with Relationship Anarchy, is that for me, I mean, first of all, the definition of relationship anarchy is going to be totally subjective and different from, what my definition isn't going to be the same as yours, even though there might be some similar threads. It's not going to be the same as maybe 3 others that you've heard, and that it's just that subjective. So that's the first thing I always disclaimer. And the second one is, for me, I make relationship anarchy synonymous with conscious relating and authentic relating, because I mean, just like true anarchists, the word anarchist is too much of a label, and relationship anarchy is too much of a label for what's going on. But if you say, oh, I practice conscious relating, or I practice authentic relating,
Right.
it makes it more about the actual action that's happening, as opposed to the label that you're identifying under and all the stereotypes that go with that label.
Well said.
Yeah.
She brought up a new term last time, or the one before. What was it? Relationship co-creationist?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
co-creative?
I think I'm did I make that up? I can't
I don't know.
Like
But
it.
it was pretty
I
good.
like it.
And then I was like, I can roll with that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have those, like you said, those like prejudices, like, that give you images of violence and hostility and, stuff like that.
Yeah. Something that my take on relationship anarchy, which may or may not be different than some of the things you've already heard, is, for me, relationship anarchy is more of a practice. It's kind of like mindfulness or something, as opposed to being an identity, like I am a non-monogamous, non-binary person,
Yeah.
and that makes a whole world of difference for me, because as a practice, it's always evolving. It can always look a little bit different, but it just has some core values that center the practice. And that way too, something I really love to highlight is that you can be a monogamous relationship anarchist. It's a philosophy. It's not a structure like monogamy versus non-monogamy. It's about how you approach that structure. And so one of those things for all the visualizers out there is, I see it as like imagining all your relationships are this internal landscape. You've just got this big kind of bluffs landscape. And, you know, some people are a little closer to you at sometimes. Some people are kind of wandering off to check out what's happening over on the east side of that landscape. But then they come back or, you know, whatnot. But that way it's not really about rank. It's just more about spatial awareness and where somebody just happens to be in a moment as opposed to the next moment. And hey, sometimes people like hanging out under the same tree that you do for longer, and that's cool. And sometimes, you know, they're getting a little bit of shade and then they want to go far out and get a nice tan, and that's also okay, you know. It's just about how do we perceive that, and that's really the core for relationship anarchy for me.
It sounds like a lot of it's really about valuing people, your own and other people's ability to be really independent and to make their choices and to be like, and to kind of in some ways like have faith that like, oh, you know, if we have these things in common now, even though maybe we've grown apart a little bit or they're over there like getting their shade or whatever, that we'll probably come back together at some point. Like it's like the idea of relationships where you're kind of like, you don't always have to be in sync. You can sort of like grow apart and then you can come back together, and there doesn't have to be this sort of like, well, why didn't you call me? Well, why didn't you call me? Like, you know, it's just like, it's this thing like, wow, I'm so glad to see you. You're here again. This is so fantastic. You know? Yeah,
totally. I have a specific beloved, or someone I consider a beloved, in mind with this exact idea. They live in a very far off location. And so it doesn't really, and we're both busy people. It doesn't make sense for us to really talk that often or catch up, you know, have that kind of really involved relationship. But I absolutely love this person. Like I would love a life partner, you know. I have those feelings towards them and they for me. And it's kind of this feeling like, okay, you know, it doesn't matter even if we talk again. I could never talk to this person again, and it doesn't change how I view them. I'm always going to call them my beloved. It doesn't matter if I never see them again or if I see them in 5 months from now for 2 days, you know. It's just the matter of, I see you, I know you exist, I have love for you. What you do for me is not contingent on that love for you. It can just be. And I feel like that's so freeing, and it just allows for more depth than when you're like, okay, so like now you're my boyfriend, and then in like 5 months we're gonna move in together and like do this. And it's like, I'm not dishing anyone who wants to climb the relationship staircase, escalator, whatever you want to call it, because that works for some people, and it's, you know, there's dopamine and adrenaline rushes in that, and that's totally fine. It's just when it becomes, okay, I need you to be what I project this label onto, and when I project this thing of satisfaction, this status symbol, you are just a commodity to me. You are just an object for me to place value and worth and image upon. That's when it starts to get really hairy. And relationship anarchy was basically built as a social movement to say, no, screw that. Just value people because they exist. Who cares? You know?
And accept them for exactly who they are. And if your needs are not aligned with what, you know, what they can give and what they're comfortable giving, then that can be a conversation, and maybe, you know, that kind of shuffles where they, you know, where they are in your life, but they can still occupy a huge part of your heart and be important to you in a lot of ways.
I think there's a big misconception about, I know, relationship anarchy. And again, like, I mean, when I first heard the term, I was like, oh no, you know, it sounds so violent. But the more I understand about it, the more, you know, I you know, resonate with it. And one of the things that I think you just brought up a minute ago about, you know, people oftentimes we're conditioned that two people need to be responsible for each other's emotional state or state of well-being or mental health. And that's one of the things where, you know, like even though we kid about being narcissists, I think that actually what's at the heart of relationship anarchy for me is kind of the opposite, because what I'm saying in my giving up, that interdependence that people create in monogamy, where they take care of each other, they protect each other from the fears of jealousy or abandonment, even though it happens anyway. But what I'm saying going into this, using this relationship model, is that, and you're not on a leash with me either. Like, if I have feelings that come up where I feel threatened, and I want you all to myself, I'm committed and willing to own that and to self-reflect upon that. And, it's that whole bumper sticker that Dad had on his car. If you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, well, okay, it's still not yours. I disagree with the bumper sticker. But anyway.
No, do you remember what his bumper sticker really said?
Well, there was the one that said, "Those who die with the most toys wins," and then the other one was, now I remember. Right.
I can't say it. I can't say. I won't
No,
say it.
if you love something, set it free, and if it comes back to you, it's yours, and if it doesn't, hunt it down and kill it. I think that was it. Wasn't that it?
That's it.
Yeah. Anyway.
I thought you were going there first. I'm like, dude, how could really you agree with that? That's
yeah,
so
yeah,
weird.
yeah. Hunt it down and kill it. How dare you?
Teresa, I don't know how I feel about you right now.
I mean, but to be fair, you could be radically transparent with a beloved about that desire to want to go hunt it down and I mean,
you're open-minded. I like that. That's great.
Well, I feel like, just from my own personal experiences, and I'm also in school to be a licensed art therapist.
Nice.
Fantastic.
That is fantastic.
So, I study a lot of different psychotherapy modalities for my schooling, and just something I've noticed is, if you just really honest about the thing or address the thing head on, then it's not as big of a thing. It's the repression that makes somebody actually go out and hunt a person down and kill them.
Right.
As opposed to saying, like, I'm feeling this murderous, raging jealousy right now. And I just really wanted to be transparent about that because it's really alive for me. I accept that this is my thing to take care of. I'm just letting you know as somebody who's close to me.
Yeah.
And then that allows that person to open up into compassionate understanding. You can have a more transparent dialogue. Maybe there's something going on for them too. And now you've built new layers of intimacy.
Right. Yeah. Either that or you got a restraining order on them.
Yeah, which I mean is also fair. Depends on how long you know them. And
Right.
if I just met you and was telling you that I have a murderous, raging jealousy about others around you,
really?
I might
on our first date.
I might support getting a restraining order. That sounds like a good legal boundary.
Yeah. But that's the good thing about transparency is, giving people all the information they need to make the best choices for themselves. So that's, I think, one of the tenets of, relationship anarchy. And
it's definitely on my website. I have a little page that's like, what is relationship anarchy? And it's got some of my own kind of bullet points that are inspired by the Relationship Anarchy manifesto, which I believe will be in the show notes
Yes,
for
it
others
will.
to find. But radical transparency as the basis of communication is one of those pillars or like core values of how I talk about relationship anarchy and coach people through it or educate people on it. And one of the things that I bring up is exactly that when you're being radically transparent with someone, you're giving them the opportunity to make an informed decision about how they want to or how they can show up for you in that moment, or if they need to leave or whatever they need to do. And the vice versa, if somebody's being radically transparent with you, that gives you the informed decision making to figure out, how can I show up for this person in a way that's also going to be good for me? And it's basically just informed consent, but on an energetic and relational level, which I think a lot of people really struggle with that concept just because we are taught very codependent types of values when we come from, I call it mononormative or monotypical, like typical monogamy structured programming.
Yeah.
There is a lot of that, especially as, you know, we were all socialized as women. So a lot of that, you go find your man, you go find a man with good health insurance, and that's exactly
Right.
your identity is how
Yeah.
much your man makes.
Yep, yep,
yeah,
and
yeah.
your perpetual sexual, you know, the extent to which you're considered sexually attractive. That's
Yes,
the other
of
thing.
course.
That's
The other part of your worth. Yeah.
Yes,
Always.
Be a pretty place to put a penis, ladies.
Yep.
Yep, that's your
Yep.
job.
Sure
Yeah.
are.
Anyway,
Yeah, I love how
digress.
ridiculously healthy that sounds. I mean, it sounds amazing, and when I've had those experiences, I've been so appreciative of them, even if we disagree on what our needs are in that moment. It still feels so healthy for someone to just say, like, I think someone should be able to just go like, you know, the way I really want this to play out is I want to have like 7 boyfriends, and I want you to not have any other girlfriends. And that's just, you know, that's just what I want. And then at least you're saying what, and by the way, that's not what I want, but I was just trying to make a ridiculous, you know, in my mind, ridiculous ask. But then at least you're having a really truthful conversation, and you can move from there. You can move into negotiations. You can move into, hey, we're actually so out of alignment, this isn't even going to work at all. You know, but at least you're not like wasting time trying to coerce someone into or manipulate someone into a situation where you're going to get them dependent on you so that they will do what you want.
yeah, even if
Right.
it's by omission, because that's some
Right.
of what I've experienced and what you're talking about is people not being transparent and by omission, you know, using that to manipulate you into, you know, kind of just doing what they want you to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, the thing that brought up for me is just when I'm relating with it's some people over other people. It's always some people over other people, but I can feel it in myself. There's this need to get approval, or like, I want you to choose me. And, you know, that comes from my own childhood traumas
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But I can always tell in my body when that's like starting to activate in a romantic dynamic. And at this point, I've become really aware of it, but it's just so interesting to see how my mind will so quickly, you know, go from being very open and like, yeah, whatever, come what may, to being like, all right, this is how I can get this person.
Yeah.
You know, it's
right.
amazing how instantaneously that can happen. And that's partially why I dive so heavy into relationship anarchy and why my relationship anarchy is non-monogamous and is, you know, more on the kind of solo poly side of things, more like I have my space and then we kind of like touch spaces kind of thing, just because for me that's how I can do my own healing work in those codependent, or like, how can I like say the right thing, do the right thing, you know, negotiate the right way to get you to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how do I get you to not leave, you know, instead of
Right.
just being like, oh yeah, it's actually okay. It's just so fascinating to see how quickly that can happen.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that? Because I've seen that come up in myself, like that exact same, and it's like your brain just does a complete shift. It's like, I'm independent, I'm happy, God please approve of me.
Yeah.
You know, like it's where do you go? Like how do you like mentally sort of take yourself back into that space where you're independent and you're making sure that your actions are so aligned with your core values and you're not like just doing things for people's approval?
Yeah, well, a big part of that has been daily practice of mindfulness, just really getting into a routine of stopping and assessing and just being present with whatever's alive and really just accepting whatever is here just in normal circumstances, so that then when I go into an activated kind of space, I'm like, oh, okay, this thing, I know this feeling in my body. Oh, wow, I can observe this. I'm actively having a conversation with somebody while in the background, my processing module is also going, okay, and now like this is starting to activate. And so we're going to just make sure that we speak a little slower. You know, we're going to slow down a little more. We're going to just really drop in like, oh, okay, what you just said is activating this. okay, here's my truth. And it's learning how to train yourself to slow down in those moments of high activation, in those moments of high adrenaline. That's where you can really start to navigate those things. And then you can go process it later and be like, whoa, what was all that about? I go take a nice scented Epsom salt bath, put on a face mask, do my little self-care routine afterwards, and just like, I can look forward to that. We'll do it then.
Would you say that the first, I don't want to say trigger because it's such a triggering word, but, the first, I'll just say trigger, is what you feel in your body? Is that, how you come to get into this mindful state and how you need it when you need it?
For me, before I get into that, I'm just going to say a great way that I've learned to navigate around the trigger word is to say activation, like activated, and finding ways to just implement that. So how do you know when you're activated? What shows up first when you're starting to feel activated by something? Those are
that's good.
Good ways to do that. Just because, trigger is a total trigger word. And it's pretty aggressive. I mean, guns have triggers.
Exactly.
And it's really your body is just activating.
And it's kind of being misappropriated from like the original psychological term, which was, I think, more related to PTSD.
Yeah.
And now instead of saying like, boy, that made me really uncomfortable, or I had feelings come up, people are like, I got so triggered. And
And that's why activated is good too. It doesn't have that kind of political stigma either. And it's more neutral. But then, yes, I would say bodily awareness for me is how I notice that I'm becoming more activated. I just tend to be a really body-based person. I think most people are, but a lot of people just aren't taught how to notice what micro tensions are happening in their body at any given moment. Or like, I tend to hold my breath when I'm speaking in my chest a lot. I've been doing it here and there during this conversation. And people aren't trained to notice that. But my grandfather was a Gestalt therapist, one of the early ones. So what Gestalt is. Right?
I mean, I couldn't tell you, but like ish.
It's like very in the moment, what's happening right now, like we're just acting out as things are going. It's like improv therapy. Basically. It's like improv art therapy almost in a way. So he taught me at a very young age how to notice what was happening in my body because of the circumstantial traumas that I had to deal with. And so I've just kind of always had that, but I know that a lot of people don't really get that until they're an adult and maybe they discover some sort of body-based therapy or Buddhist psychology, dialectical behavioral therapy. DBT is, it's kind of like mindfulness psychology hybrid, does a lot of that kind of work where on the cerebral level, it's like, okay, just spend a whole week labeling your thoughts and feelings when you're feeling something like emotion. And you're thinking, I'm thinking, doing and like breaking it down that way, and then feeling where those are in your body. And as you get more accustomed to what your body's natural responses are to things, then you can start to be like, my chest is tightening up, so I'm activated now. Okay, you don't even have to like think that whole sentence. It's just in your body, and then you're like, relax the chest, like don't start doing that,
I call that being out of resonance with your inner being. Like a lot of the times I think, I can get pretty hippy dippy, but I think that oftentimes when we're feeling bad, we're in disagreement with our inner being. And so, but I just was activated by a thought that like, this seems like a really good time for maybe you to enlighten everybody with maybe what some definitions of relationship anarchy are versus like, contrasting and comparing to polyamory, because there's a lot of people out there that all of this is new to them. And again, bringing a depth of awareness to this, sadly, it's not poorly named, it's accurate, but,
it's just because the word anarchy has been politicized in a way that is not totally, but pretty antithesis to what it actually means. Anarchy is a neutral term, not a violent term. There is violent and nonviolent anarchy. Anyways. But yes.
It seems we associate it with being nihilistic. And it's really not. So.
I think that's from a lot of that probably stems from like the punk movement
Oh,
and
yeah.
how
We
they
can blame the
kind
Sex
of
Pistols.
appropriated how they appropriated that to a large extent, and it didn't come out with it came out as like, fuck all of this, but then there's no construction or constructivist sort of thing that happens behind that, like no like, and this is what we want. It was just like, fuck this shit, spray paint, shave head,
Exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
The
like burn it
audience.
to the ground.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it's what are you going to build in place of the thing that you just
What
burnt
do
to
you-
the ground? And
Exactly.
that's the part of the conversation that tends to get missing a lot. So with that being said,
Yeah.
my definition of relationship anarchy is that it is, well, first of all, it's a social movement that was started by Andy Nordgren in 2006. And relationship anarchy is a relating philosophy that takes away the emphasis from prioritizing relationships that are based on sexual or romantic merit and puts the emphasis on prioritizing relationships that authentically make the most sense, that you authentically want to center in your life for whatever purpose. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It doesn't have to be a sexual relationship. Relationship anarchy is meant for literally anything you can have a relationship with. This cup, the table, any of you, you know, my family, my friends, my beloveds.
The pizza man.
The pizza man.
Person. Sorry.
The pizza person. The pizza human. Or the pizza cat.
Yeah.
I have a beloved that makes the comparison of relationship anarchy to how humans relate to cats. And I think it's really great. So whenever you see, if you're a cat lover, which hopefully you all are, when you see a cat and you're like, oh, kitty, and you give it your hand so it can smell you before you pet it. And if the cat doesn't want to pet you, it just walks away and you just kind of move on.
Yeah.
And if it does let you pet it, then you go and you have a nice time of petting it and you bond for a little bit. But you don't get upset when that cat goes to your friend and also gets some pets.
Right.
You're just like, yay, kitty's getting pets.
Well
You know? And why can we do that with cats? Why can we do that with our friends? But then when it
Yeah.
comes to especially romantic partners, sexual partners, and family members,
Yeah.
why can't we do it with them?
Don't deny your friendly pussy. That's what it comes down to, I think. Yeah.
And if your pussy wants to go lick its own balls instead of getting pet by you, you respect that too.
I was trying to make that analogy. That, you know,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
and
I
that's
got
how
you.
we feel. You know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Sometimes we're going. But
Yeah, so the cat analogy is great.
I love that.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then that way, you know, looking at it as a relating philosophy instead of like a relationship identity brings it into that
Yes.
umbrella. Then again, going back to you can use it in monogamy or non-monogamy with friends, so on and so forth. And it just, I feel like when people get really into relationship anarchy, they just end up being better people because they're not trying to force people in their lives to do what they want. You know, whether it's your kids or your partners or that random person on the street, you recognize like that's their own person.
Yeah.
I'm my own person.
Right. That's why I think it's so funny that the initial idea we have when we hear the term is like the opposite, that we're just all like beyond narcissists, just these like self-absorbed sociopaths. And really, I find a lot of even like undertones of Buddhism in it. Like, you know, you're talking about
Totally.
awareness and how it's like I'm, you know, that's really what I'm committed to is I am owning in my own awareness what my feelings are, and I'm not projecting it onto another person that they're responsible for my well-being. They're responsible for these feelings. You soothe me from the outside in and make this feeling go away. It's the opposite. You know, I might be hurting, but I'm saying, and I know, you know, it's me. It's in me, and I'm, you know, going to find my way through. And the other part of it that I think people have a misconception about with that projection of, you know, self-absorption in it is that I think that, like, how I feel is that I'm not saying that I'm not going to be, you know, available and transparent. In fact, I care so very deeply. It's just wanting to kind of get outside of, I feel like, these repressive confines that actually corrupt the love itself that should be the basis of the relationship. And that's what I want to kind of be free from. And, you know, you know, I'm not even saying that like I want to have sex with multiple people at the same time or anything like that. I might end up tomorrow meeting someone and then just being, you know, in a monogamish relationship, you know, from that day forth. But I want the freedom to have relationship that is based in love. I want to be an advocate for love, even if it means outing myself and, you know, giving someone permission to recede in our intimate relationship and find another intimate relationship. We're advocates for love, I think.
Yeah. And I think a huge part of what you're saying too is rechanging the definition of what love means. Because love, I feel like, especially in Western society, the US, and from what I hear of the UK society, one of my beloveds is from England, so we have these conversations.
Right.
Well, you know, love is a commodity, or it's become kind of this restricted commodity. You can only give love to a certain amount of people in
Right.
certain ways.
Yep.
And relationship anarchy is really just about, you know, liberating that and freeing that love and allowing it to be uncaged and to be exactly as you said, to take on whatever form it authentically wants to take on. You know, one love isn't better or worse than another type of love. They're
Right.
different. We're the only civilization that has one word for love.
Yeah, I've heard
You
this
know,
before. That's fascinating.
In Japan, they have 3 different words for types of lovers, essentially. They have like that, oh, I have a little schoolgirl crush on you. Oh, you're my partner. And oh, you're my like main, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in Greek, they have 7 different words for different types of love, ranging from, you know, brotherly love to family love to friendship love to sexual love to an all-encompassing type of love. We're the only civilization that, or a language at least, that doesn't have multiple words for different types of love. So of course that's going to show in our culture.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and what kind of limitations it puts in your mind of like, oh, there's only just this one true kind of love, and everything else just, you know, is secondary. It comes after that. And that's so limiting too. That's one of the things I'm really appreciating about kind of being, you know, in a single, you know, state in my life, is just being able to actually be free of feeling like I have to take care. I'm emotionally responsible for this one person. And that now I get to be open and available to all of my relationships and feel the depth of love and the importance. And I think one of the things that excites me about like this relationship anarchy and beyond monogamy is that I've always had this passionate dream about, you know, getting back to community, functional community. And it's very challenging to do, but this seems like it's possibly one way to get a little bit closer, because I've never been satisfied in any monogamous relationship getting all of my needs met from one person. Like Esther Perel says, that's a great way to kill a relationship, you know? So, and that's happened in every one of mine. And so I like the concept and the idea and ideal of being able to have that community again. But it's not there yet. So this is what I'm really curious about, you know, what it's like for you two that are practiced at this way of life. And do you feel, does this sound familiar to you? Does it feel familiar that it actually kind of supplements and is creating that lost tribalism of humankind?
Yeah, definitely for me, that's one way that I've seen it play out in my life. So at first, a year ago, I have a friend who's a relationship anarchist, or he practices relationship anarchy, and I was like, okay, so I'm non-hierarchical, solo poly. What's the difference between that and relationship anarchy? You know, and he was like, I don't really know. You know, he was just like, well, how you practice relationships and how I practice relationships is probably different, but you know, I don't, you know, I suppose you could do all those things and get there through some of the tenets of relationship anarchy. But how I'm finding that it contributes to community is in that acceptance of other people as they come to you. Is just, it isn't about, so like if you scrap the idea of a destination, if you're like, the destination is not the goal now, the
Right.
goal is the journey. And so once you scrap that, you're able to just look at everyone as they come to you, and you're saying, you know, I think you're amazing. I want to be here with you, and these are all the alignments that we have, and isn't this wonderful? And then you can also see how they align with other people, and you know, I kind of find myself sometimes with sweeties kind of being like, oh wow, you know, you'd be pretty good with that person too, you know, like I kind of find myself doing that a little bit, and I'm like, is that weird? And I'm like,
You
who
unfuck
cares?
yourself by doing that.
I unfuck myself. Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, I feel like in those ways you're just allowed to just give up the idea of ownership and of that destination, and kind of going like love, you know, just loving everyone. And that feels like community to me. Is, I don't know,
Yeah.
your take on it.
Totally. Yeah. I'm gonna take off of that ownership trail and run with it.
Get it.
Yeah, something in my experience is when you take ownership out and you're not worrying about who's mine, who's yours, what's mine, what's yours.
Yeah.
I mean, boundaries, of course, are a thing that we
Yeah.
all need to cultivate and be mindful of others and all of that stuff. But when I'm not worried about, you know, who are you to me, or what is this to me, or what is this, you know, where can I fit into, you know, that kind of thing, and just like, hi, I'm here, then I notice that I show up for myself more as my own community. And when I show up in community, well, first of all, people like me more because they feel like they don't have to put on, they don't feel like there's an expectation. They feel comfortable to just be themselves and just be seen. And as just who I am, that's what I want. I want everyone I come into contact with to just feel like they can be safe and seen with me. And then also it just puts me in a perspective where just everyone's my community, you know? It's like, hi, I met you. You're my community, you know. It's like whatever your boundaries are, whatever your like needs are for whatever this to be or not to be, that's fine. But like now I know you, so I'm sending you good vibes. And in that sense, it's like, and then when you find other really resonant people who are really on that same page intentionally or just there, then it kind of does expand this like, oh, there's others out there, and then they're finding others, and they're finding others, and you don't even know how many others, but it just puts you in touch with that. And I feel like it puts you in touch with this great sort of energetic field of just loving awareness. And now I'm starting to get a little woo woo here.
I like that. Get that woo woo.
Get there.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the art, right?
Yeah, I did. I saw it. Yeah. You're channeling dimensions, multi-dimensional wisdom here.
Yeah, well, so I just feel like it puts us in touch with that, you know, universal love, God consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And then when you're in touch with that, and when you're in regular communication with that, and you have a regular calling card or access to that source, we'll just call it, then it doesn't matter whether you're physically with people or you're by yourself, you have 20 partners or you have one or none. You feel totally in communion because you are just in communion with all that is there.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I might be fucked up then, because like right now, I'm not feeling communion with all that's there. I mean, like I'll meditate and check in with my inner being and be like, yay, that feels good. But then I also, you know, from when I was younger, I did fight with like depression and anxiety a lot, and I read a lot of self-help books and everything, and I remember hearing that like if you spend too much time alone, it will increase the cortisol in your bloodstream, and you know it's like thoughts that you know fire together, wire together, and that I do think it's unhealthy to be alone too much. And this is where I feel like my question was coming from, is being a person who's on the beginning of this path, this journey. I get the feeling that it's a lot like it's a microcosmic version of the macrocosm of life, wherein when you first get started on this path, it's like, you know, they say about life, you know, at first when you're really being true to yourself, you find yourself walking alone and walking away from the pack, which can be scary. But the more you stick to, you know, your believing in yourself and trusting where you want to go, the more you start to, in your periphery, see that there are people walking with you on the same path. And that's, you know, what I want more than I don't want, you know, anything like codependence or, you know, but yeah, that is where I am, where it's like, I'm in the walking alone part where it's just like me and the crickets, hello, hello.
Yeah, you haven't quite learned how to use the chat feature on the RPG that you're playing.
See, I don't even know what that
Totally.
means. Yeah, I don't know. That's clearly not.
That's
Oh, this is some real nerdy game. Like a role-playing
That was
game,
awesome.
you know, when you have a
Oh.
massively multiplayer
I don't
online
play
role-play
any
game.
games.
Yeah,
They-
there's, every interface has a different chat
Yeah.
function, and then you can communicate with other people that are in the world, and you can trade items, go on quests together, kind of stuff. And
Like Minecraft.
Yeah.
I don't know, my
I
nieces
actually
play
haven't
that.
played Minecraft, so I don't quite know how the multiplayer interface works. But most games nowadays have like a component where if you're seeing someone else running across the street, the game or the screen, that's probably another player in another place playing the game and doing their own thing. And honestly, there's a game I'm playing right now that I was telling one of my beloveds is the most relationship anarchy game imaginable. It's called Sky. You don't form parties with people. You just occasionally can, you find these specific areas where you can actually use the chat. And then all other times you have these random expressions that you can use for nonverbal chat. And you can make your character make sounds, but they're like musical sounds.
Ooh.
oh cool.
Interesting.
And then you can offer them your hand and take them, or they can offer you their hand and they'll take you, and you give up your autonomy at that point. They're in control. Whoever is in front of the hand holding is in control.
Oh, neato.
And they'll maybe
Oh.
take you to find a spirit you haven't found yet, or here's this hidden area that you can't access because you're a level 2 and I'm a level 20, So and then you do your little mission and then you let go. Maybe you stay friends, but that's about it, and it's just the most relationship anarchy game that I've
love
played thus
that.
far.
I
But
feel like I might have, now that you're mentioning it. I feel like is it kind of older? Like,
it's actually pretty new.
Oh.
I'm playing it on my iPad Pro, but it's a Nintendo Switch game. I think
okay.
it came out maybe 1 or 2 years ago. It's called Sky, Children of the Light. That was a little plug for that.
yeah.
It's
So it's
really
not
cute.
Skyrim.
No,
it's
it's
Skyrim
it's
job.
this really
That's
cute
like-
game.
That's like a rim job at 40,000 feet.
Yay!
But is the rim the cloud?
Well, if
The
you
cosmic
wanted to
tongue,
be, yeah.
I think it's the anosphere.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't play any video games because they all give me Tourette syndrome,
So
which I already have. So
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say give you or activate it further.
activate my Tourette syndrome. Exactly.
I was thinking about how you're saying you're feeling kind of disconnected at this point in your journey, and I was thinking about one thing that I do as I sort of go to bed every night. Whoops, because at first I had a problem not being anyone's number one person. Like I was so used to being, you're the most important person to me, and I was
Yeah.
like, so what's that like for me? How am I doing? And it was like, instead of being one person's everything, it was like I had these threads of connection to several different people. And that felt really good to me. Is like, don't imagine that you're alone, but imagine that there are these threads that connect you and these thoughts and these, I don't know, energies. If you see now, I'm going to get woo-woo. So it's my turn.
Char, who
My
are you
turn to
right
get
now?
woo-woo. But no, it is like you're still connected to them. You're still in their minds and they're in your mind and everything. So it's
Right.
not like you're completely alone ever.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I do think there's sort of like a deconditioning and opening up, and then intentionally deciding for yourself how you want to live your life when you make the choice to, if you're like me and you realize oh man, I'm just going to have to walk this road less traveled because this is what I resonate with the most. But I imagine, I get what you're saying, that I think it is good to constantly, affirm the relationships that you have and to appreciate the relationships you have, actively appreciate them, and not slip into that old mindset of well, if only I had this little, American dream romantic picture, come true, then I'd be fill in the blank. I'd be happy. I'd feel whole. I'd feel whatever. And I kind of got over that a long time ago. But I do think that the longer you go down this path, the more you actually make connections where you can start to have these relationships that have more of a depth to them. When you're having relationship, you're in relationship with people who also embrace something similar to this relationship anarchy model or beyond monogamy. Because then, in a lot of the relationships I am in, I feel the limitations of them and their monogamous relationships, you know? So it's like, I don't, you know, have full access. You know, no one's going to, you know, fulfill those things that you get fulfilled when you're in a monogamous relationship. Like, I'll drop everything for you and I'm there and I'm tending to you. You know, there's a little bit of a hello, you know, for a while until I think that you start to develop those relationships that, you know, can be a little bit more available because they're not all locked in the confines of this monogamous structure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a lot of words. I
It's like
know,
you're
but-
taking all the needs, and instead of putting them on one person, you're putting it on a community, essentially.
Right.
And that community could be lovers, friends, family, all those people, and they're all highly valued, and they can all show up for you in different ways. And you show up for them in different ways.
There's a really great graphic on the internet. You can find a bunch of different versions just through a quick Google search called the Relationship Anarchy Smorgasbord.
Oh my gosh!
And
I
it's
have to find it
Oh, I'm
basically-
going to look for it too.
Yeah.
well, if you're looking for it, I'm not going to.
Oh, okay. I'll do it.
It's basically a bunch of different bubbles with categories of different types of needs, and then what are some things in those categories. So you say companionship, and maybe that's like cooking dinner together, cohabitation, sharing finances, you know, things like that. Or you have sexual needs, kink, you know, like whatever you put in there,
Yeah.
procreation, you know, all different types of categories, and then within that different actions. And you can just literally take this graphic, sit with somebody and be like, okay, so like, let's pick a need, and like, where can we, like, what within this need can we fulfill anything for each other in that?
Yeah.
Yes, no, like, okay. And then you're taking all of your relationships, and then rather than assessing them based on an idea of status or an idea of value based on the labels and what those labels are assumed to mean, then you're placing various emphasis on relationships that meet various needs. So, for example, if you're going through a really hard time and you have 2 or 3 people that meet certain emotional intimacy needs and community types of needs like that, then like though you're probably going to lean on those people a little bit more than maybe somebody that you have more of like a business need, or, you know, an entertainment need or shared passion with. And maybe some of those people have some of those other needs too. And then that's where you can get into some more like life companionships and longer term beloveds, is where there's a bunch of needs that are all getting met just naturally. But it's rather than saying, okay, like, because I'm having sex with you, that means that you need to also meet all these other needs for me. Maybe that person's just a really good partner in bed, but they are like, they have the emotional bandwidth of a spoon, you know? and that's fine. You know,
I'm open to that.
Yeah, but then
long
you
as they
just
can
find
fork.
someone that you can. No,
So bad.
Oh, very-
so bad. It's good.
Is this the relationship anarchy smorgasbord thing you're talking about there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
you
and
email that
there's
to me
a
and I'll
bunch
put it
of
in the
different
chat?
kinds. There's a bunch of different ones. People remake it for all sorts of different, like, because again, it doesn't just have to be for romance or sex. Like, you can make a business model relationship anarchy smorgasbord for your business team, for your you can like bring
that's
this
so cool.
to the CEO and be like, all right, you want your team to be more efficient, just like call a meeting, throw this graphic in here, and then everyone will know kind of their role, and like will be playing
Right.
to their strengths and whatever in your little community. And then it just cuts conflict down a lot, you know, just to
Yeah.
have those conversations up front.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
hopefully everyone gets their needs met, or, you know, the majority of their needs.
Right? Well, and then going back to the radical transparency part, it's also totally okay if a person has something happen in their life where their ability to meet X or Y need is no more. Like, I
Yeah.
can't meet this need for you anymore. And so you have
Yeah.
to change the agreement. And that's another part of relationship anarchy, is that agreements are customizable to every relationship. But
Right.
even within one relationship container, those agreements are constantly shifting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you tend to have like written agreements or verbal agreements? What do you?
I mean, I have written agreements for business contracts, but if I were to have like I mean, I really try to keep my intimate and personal relationships as simple as possible right now. So that just sounds like too much work. If we need a written agreement, it's just probably a little bit too too much work. But I understand
Yeah.
where there's some cases where you have a couple who has children, but they're not cohabiting, they're not romantic, and they have a
Yeah.
written agreement for boundaries with new partners and their
Yeah.
kids. Like I've met a number of people who have those kinds of written agreements for like custody and like can't think of the word,
Co-parenting.
co-parenting, but it's like the co-ownership of your child. What is the when you have you legally have the
joint custody.
joint
Oh,
custody.
yeah.
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 And you have the physical custody of the kids, and then you have to come up with on your own what that means as far as their exposure to other people in your world, especially if you're dating or you're non-monogamous, or even if you're together and co-parenting and cohabiting. What's the rule for those kinds of things? Sometimes people need those written agreements because that's serious. That is something that
Right.
that does need to be taken more into account. Don't have children and don't plan on having children, so I personally don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But so written agreements can work for some people.
Yeah.
For me, I just try to keep it really as easy as possible, and I'm from the East Coast, so I just rip the Band-Aid off. I'm like, hi, it's the first date, we're just gonna this is how I relate. This is who I'm already relating with. You can fit in wherever you want. Like
that.
this is what I'm open to, this is what I'm not open to, and most of my conversations are going to be this direct.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you handle that? Great.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Now that you've said you can handle that, I expect you to be transparent with me. If you stop being transparent with me, I'm going to just leave.
Right. I'm out of here.
That's great. And if they hear that initial talk, and you're actually giving them the power to go, oh yeah, this totally is not going to work for me. And they might just be out of here, and you just saved yourself and them like maybe weeks
Yeah.
of this dance that that would have gone nowhere anyway, or could have been a disaster or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Right.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I've had situations where, there's been kind of I don't know how I feel about that. Can we try? Sure, we can try. And then they're like, yeah, this isn't for me. Or sometimes they're like, this is
Right.
so awesome. It can go
Yeah.
both ways, but it does really just kind of weed people out.
Yeah.
And it can be really interesting, especially as someone with a female body who I date men, women, all types, but I do tend to date more men than women or male bodied people. And it's so interesting to see some of the different spectrums of reactions that being extremely direct
Yes.
as a female bodied person to a male bodied person can, it throws a lot of people off.
Yeah.
Partially just because, we're not conditioned to be like, hi, let me be direct,
Yeah.
Right. No one's conditioned for expecting that
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, like men, but the average conditioned person to a woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when I say conditioned, I mean kind of more in a broad spectrum of we're all conditioned as children based on the adult influences and the other influences around us in our upbringing. So there are some, if there's a male-bodied person who grew up to hippie parents in a hippie commune where you love and respect every single person of every single body type and gender and race as that, then they're conditioned into that belief.
Right.
But typically in our society,
Right.
men are conditioned to repress their emotions and dominate over women, and women are conditioned, and this is just body types. I'm not getting into, I know there's the gender spectrum,
Right.
but people tend to still be conditioned based on their body type.
Yeah.
And women are conditioned to be more subservient and quiet and acquiescent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was. At
Yeah.
least.
I was.
Oh,
yeah.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting when someone kind of starts pursuing you and you're like, I'm not going to run. By the way, if you're expecting me to run away from you, it's not happening because we're not playing games here, and then they're like a little like baffled for a minute. Like some people are great with it. They're just like, cool, you're not running. You're actually just being super straight up with me, and I'm like, yeah.
So as somebody else who's also been more practiced in the relationship anarchy path, I'm really, I just forgot the question.
Oh, I was talking about like being pursued and not running, kind of.
Yeah, I still can't remember the
Squirrel.
question.
Oh well.
There's a lot of squirrels in here. Like I see them all the time. She doesn't see them, but I see the squirrels
You
a lot.
do.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Oh, I remember what it was. Okay.
Oh, good.
As somebody who practices relationship anarchy, do you get the experience where you're upfront and say, "Oh yeah, I don't play games." And you're not playing it. You're not just saying that to play a game. Like you actually mean, yeah, I just don't mess with playing games. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't play with games either." And then they go and start playing with games.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
no, I meant it.
I think it's hard to see your conditioning. Like you don't see, it's like they say, when there's shit on your windshield, leave me for the, just effeminate colloquialisms here. But yeah, when there's shit on your windshield, it's like you're like looking out at the world and there's shit on everything that you see because there's shit on your windshield. And then someone else can come up and like acknowledge that and pull it off. And then you see it, and so until you see your shit, you don't see your shit. You just see everything with your shit on it. There you go.
That's true.
Call me Grace.
We have a question actually from someone who's listening. Do you think I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Do you think it's easier as a female-bodied person to get into this relationship style? Like, have there been fewer roadblocks?
That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
I'm a Libra, so don't be surprised when I say yes and no. But in some ways, yes. And in those ways, yes, because I am not often perceived as a predator or with a certain type of like malintended agenda because of being in a female body. And so and I'm not necessarily seen as a player or any of that kind of stuff. Right. So on that spectrum, yes, it is easier because people are less suspicious of me. So it makes it easier for them to relate authentically with me much sooner. On the other hand, though, being in a female body and getting the receiving end of a lot of that predatory and manipulative and sexual prowess kind of behavior, no, it's not easier because I am constantly having people, thinking that just because I am non-monogamous or just because I'm open about my non-traditional sexual relationship structure, that's like, an invitation to get it in my business.
Right.
And it's really not, I'm actually I'm a very affectionate person when I get to know you, but I really don't like to be touched by strangers, partially because I'm on the autism spectrum and partially because of my own abuse traumas that I'm like, I don't know you. Like, why are you touching me?
Yeah.
So on that level, it can be kind of difficult because people seem to see that as, you're be inviting, and yes and no. On the other hand, though, for male-bodied people, and some of my male-bodied beloveds that I've had this conversation with, they have to struggle with how they present themselves because, again, of like they could be totally genuine and have the best intention and be perceived as being creepy, being perceived as wanting something that you're expecting something. Having to navigate that. And I'm also guilty of being extremely suspicious of male-bodied people that are friendly to me, even if they're just like saying, wow, I like your painting when I'm live painting, just because, I've had my own experiences with that. So on that sense, you get the flip. So it's just kind of like you got to pick your battles.
Yeah. So for female-bodied people, you're going to have a lot more choices and people are less suspicious of you, but you're also sometimes going to feel inundated. And it sounds like the reverse is definitely true from what I've heard from some male-bodied people.
Yeah. If you think about it, like the dating app structure, women or female-bodied people on dating apps get flooded with likes from male body. We're just talking heteronormative relationship right now. Female body, totally flooded. Whereas some of my male-bodied friends who are straight, they're like crickets. Will they'll go a month and they've got 3 Tinder bots. That's the only people who and when they try to be nice in a message, they'll get some sort of like, are you being a creep? And it's like, and I support female-bodied people being suspicious and having that second guessing just because there are a lot of predators out there. But it does make it harder for the authentic male-bodied people to go out and relate. So yeah, similar to the Tinder social structures, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys brought this up too, because that's one of the things that I've been, kind of, I don't know if struggling's a heavy word, but kind of thinking about and dealing with is like, how to come out, with that already having intuited that I'm probably going to come up against that experience of, being seen as like, easier. I just want to get it on with everybody. And really, like, I relate to you a lot in that, although people can definitely, I'm a touch junkie, but it takes me a long time to warm up to someone sexually. Like, I have to, build trust, and, especially with women, our sexual response is based in relaxation. And so, I'm definitely the poster child for that. So I've been kind of, a little fearful about coming out, for many reasons of saying, I'm a relationship anarchist. Like, that's going to look good on a dating website or whatever, like, because of all the prejudice against the terms. But then there's that other part you just talked about that I am nervous about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So I actually just looked. We are like 5 minutes over. Isn't that amazing?
my
Like,
God.
this went so fast. I
Wow.
can't even believe it. So is there anything, I know that you have some shows coming up with your bands. Do you want to like give them a little plug?
Let's see. The Libertine Bells is going to be at, oh no, now I have to realize that I don't know where
Thursday.
Yeah, it's Thursday. Oh, darn it. Yeah, at
Laurelhurst?
Park. No. I'm going to have to look
Cathedral
it up.
Park?
Damn it all.
And we
It's not
also
Cathedral
know
Park.
that the Saloon Ensemble is having Burning Man in a Day
All of Burning Man in a Day.
at Mississippi Pizza, 7 p.m.
Yep.
Saturday night. It's going to be amazing. I've done it before. It's so
Yep, I'm going to get to sing all
fun.
my dirty bitch songs and some new
yeah.
ones.
Oh,
Yeah. You
Oh
know
my
how I
God.
rewrote My Sharona to be My Vagina?
yeah.
Singing that one. It's going to be epic.
And then while
Epic.
she's looking that up, Amelia, do you have anything else you'd like to
Yeah.
plug, or any last thoughts or anything that come up to you?
Let's see, the only event that I have coming up at the moment is I'm speaking on a panel for the ARS Electronica Festival Garden 2020
What the hell is that?
in New York City. I mean, it's online, but the festival's happening in New York City. Yeah, so it's this Austrian art tech company puts on this festival every year, and because of coronavirus, they didn't have it last year, and then this year they decided to expand it to a worldwide. So my friend's company is in charge of the North American version of this festival in New York City. And so I am speaking with a group of our colleagues on a panel about virtual reality and psychedelic therapy.
Hell
yeah.
Basically. What was that called again?
It's
cool.
called the ARS Electronica Festival Garden in New York City. I'm trying to remember the name of my friend's company that's putting it on, but it's on their main website. I'll get that to you for the show notes.
Perfect.
Great. And that's going to be a whole weekend. All the panels are online. The rest of the festival's in NYC. So, you might be able to catch that talk. It's going to be like a 3-hour panel.
Oh,
To get
wow.
really
Two.
into it. And then other than that, I don't have anything that's totally, set in stone scheduled.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
This
my
did fly
pleasure.
by. Wow.
I know,
Thank
right?
you so much.
so much. Yeah, that was awesome. What a
Yeah.
great conversation.
It was good for me. Was it good for you guys? I hope it was good for you guys.
Do you need
out
some
there.
aftercare?
Yeah. Spooning psychics for me.
Did you find?
Oh, yeah, we're
Yeah,
playing
Libertine
at
Bells.
the Hillside Park, Northwest Culpeper Road at 5 p.m.
Yay, on Thursday. All right, so, and then I'm just going to do the quick thing of, the totally awesome and sexy opinions that we shared today are solely our opinions, and we don't represent anyone else. And that's about it. And thank you so much for being here, everyone, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
Well, I won't, but see you when I see you.